All right.
Okay, when I came up here, the the pendulum wasn't moving. I gave the pendulum a shove, and I immediately saw that this is called the anchor right here, A-N-C-H-O-R. The anchor was rocking. This side was rocking a lot. This side was rocking in just barely enough to catch the tip of the escapement gear teeth. Consequently, the sound that it was making was very off. It was like boom, bup, boom, bup. It was uneven as you were responding to. It's what you want. You want to hear an even rhythm, as even as you can possibly get it, so that it just sounds like it's spaced evenly back and forth, disregarding the slightly different tone that these two impacts make. The rhythmic spacing should be as even as you can get it, and the way you get it even is to adjust these right here. These knurled knobs.
Mark, if you put that on magnifying, you won't destroy my shot.
Are this is actually a knob that is driving a machine screw sideways onto this piece of metal right here, and this is the complementary one on the other side. And what they are doing is they're trying to basically make the anchor rock back and forth evenly when it's pushing on the pendulum. And so the innermost little knurled, these are actually like knurled nuts right here. They're really beautiful, nice little circular knurled nuts. You loosen them up, and then you can adjust they're actually called the beat pins, because you're trying to get an even beat out of this anchor as it reacts against the pendulum gear, the escapement gear. And so it was completely uneven, and it was so uneven that in my estimation, it's very likely that it would run for a while and then gradually sort of falter down and down and down until it just was not, this action here was not delivering enough impulse to keep the pendulum swinging back and forth anymore. Because one side of it was almost doing nothing.
Wow.
So we've adjusted it back and forth a couple times. We're listening to it. We're trying to get it as even as we can get it. And right now, it's pretty close to being even. And so what I did was I loosened up the inner knurled knobs, or knurled nuts, are really the same as like a lock nut on a bolt that you might run into in your house or something like that. You loosen them up, you adjust these until it's as even as you can get it, then you roll the lock nuts in and tighten them up against this so that it locks it into place, and then consequently the little vibration will consequently not be able to loosen these up and make them drift off and then throw it out of beat. It'll stay where you left it if you really lock the lock nuts into place.
So like they are now.
Like they are now.
Good.
So, there's a little bit of a difference. There's a little bit of difference in the sound, maybe a tiny bit of difference in the rhythm, but it's pretty close. The other thing that I mentioned earlier that I will repeat now is that an old building like this, and you've had some experience with this, an old building like this can sway back and forth a little bit in the wind, and it may actually even maybe sort of just lean over a little bit for a while and then come back up and then lean the other way. I don't know if that's what happened here or not, but if it did, then all this adjusting that we just did right now would not be as good anymore. If the clock leaned over this way, it would all of a sudden sound wrong again. If it leaned over this way, it would sound wrong to some extent. So it is possible that the building's verticality can shift a little bit, and that will throw off this adjustment. Right now, it's pretty close to being right. So it would take, it would have to, if you came up here and listened to it and it really sounded like way off, then you should try to loosen these up and adjust these and try to get it to back into plumb again, and then tighten up the lock nuts. And just every time you come up here, you should listen to it and see what it sounds like. Down in Milford, Massachusetts, there's an old clock older than this that I restored. I'll set it up, get it exactly right, come back 6 months later, it'll be going boom, 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 just like what it was doing here.
And the reason for that was because of the
building.
building.
You know, I knew that these hadn't changed because they were tight. You know?
Right.
But it is also true. You should check this out as well, just in case, by some fluke, these get loose. If these threaded machine screws are not tight against the sides of the crush.
Right, they can loosen.
If there's looseness right in there, and you can like rattle this back and forth, if you can rattle this relative to this, like right now it's very tight. I'm shaking the whole thing, but it's not rattling there. But if you can rattle it right there, if those screws are not really bearing firmly against the side of this, then the impulses, whatever they may be, that are being developed right here, when this pushes off and that pushes off, part of it will get lost right here, because it'll get transmitted into just wiggling, instead of like pushing on the pendulum. Some percentage of it, if it's loose right here, will get just disappear into looseness, and this will not get pushed as much as it should, and that can also make it stop. Like the last time this happened to me was at a church in Lexington, right outside of Cambridge, and you know, I had the thing running great, and then they said, I don't know, it stopped, and I went up there and looked, these were loose, and so it was just, this would do what it's trying to do, and then here we just go rattle, and nothing was getting down to this anymore. This has to push against the pendulum, which is what it's doing, very slightly, but just enough to keep that very heavy 75-pound cast iron bob swinging back and forth. It's just enough impulse from that little bit down through here, down to here, and then down to the bottom to keep it moving. So if it loses it anywhere, then it'll eventually have problems and maybe stop.
Yeah. So
That's the end of my dissertation.
All right, so questions. All right.